Let me tell you something most people will never say to you. You're not average. You're just underutilized. There's a difference. Average is a permanent condition. Unused ideas is a temporary decision. And right now, you're sitting on unused capacity, unused ideas, unused discipline, unused courage. You feel it, don't you? That quiet frustration when you know you could be doing more, building more, becoming more. This isn't motivation. This is a reality check. Because I know something about you. And once you hear it, you won't be able to unhear it. You are capable of more than you're currently allowing yourself to attempt. Let's start with something uncomfortable. The ceiling you think you've hit isn't a ceiling. It's a story built from past results, other people's opinions, and the limits you've rehearsed so often they feel factual. But they're not facts. They're assumptions you stopped questioning. And the most dangerous assumptions are the ones that feel reasonable. You've been operating at a fraction of your true capacity, not because you're lazy, not because you lack intelligence, but because you've been optimizing for safety instead of possibility. You choose goals you're fairly certain you can reach. You aim where the risk of embarrassment is low. You test yourself just enough to stay comfortable, but not enough to discover where your actual edge is. Here's the truth most people avoid. You have not yet seen what you're capable of under full commitment. Not partial interest, not mild curiosity. Full commitment, the kind where excuses are deleted, the kind where discomfort is expected, the kind where you don't negotiate with yourself when things get inconvenient. You underestimate your adaptability. The human brain is designed to expand under pressure. Skills compound, confidence compounds. Discipline compounds, but only when triggered. If you never stress the system, it never upgrades. You stay at the same level, telling yourself this is just who you are, when in reality it's just who you practice being. Think about the last time you did something that scared you and survived it. Afterward, your baseline shifted. What felt impossible became normal. That's how growth works. It's not a dramatic transformation. It's a series of expanded baselines. But you have to voluntarily walk into the discomfort zone for that expansion to happen. Right now, there's an idea you've been postponing, a move you've been delaying, a version of yourself you've been negotiating with instead of committing to. You tell yourself you need more preparation, more clarity, more confidence. But confidence is a byproduct of action, not a prerequisite. You don't wait to feel ready. You move, and readiness catches up. You are more resilient than your internal dialogue suggests. You've survived things that once felt unbearable. You've learned skills you once thought were complicated. You've adapted to environments you once thought were overwhelming. And yet when it comes to your next level, you shrink your expectations to match your current identity. That's the constraint. Your identity is outdated. You're measuring your future by your past performance instead of your future capacity. And those are not the same variable. Capacity expands with pressure. Performance reflects practice. If you practice playing small, your performance will confirm smallness. If you practice operating at a higher standard, your capacity rises to meet it. There's a version of you operating at 2x intensity, 2x focus, 2x courage. That version is not fictional. It's unused. And the only thing separating you from that version is permission. Permission to attempt something that might not work. Permission to temporarily fail while upgrading. Most people never give themselves that permission. They protect their ego instead of expanding their potential. They choose certainty over scale. They stay impressive within a small circle instead of risking being average in a bigger arena. But you're not wired for average arenas. If you were, you wouldn't feel that tension inside you. That quiet dissatisfaction. That sense that you're capable of something larger, sharper, more impactful. That tension is not anxiety. It's unused potential pressing against containment. And here's the part you can't ignore anymore. The longer you avoid stretching, the heavier that tension becomes. Because deep down, you know you haven't truly tested yourself yet. Fear is not a stop sign. It's a signal you're near something meaningful. Most people interpret fear as a warning to retreat. Your heart races, your thoughts get louder, and your instinct is to slow down or turn around. But what if that sensation isn't telling you to stop? What if it's pointing directly at the edge of your next expansion? Fear shows up when the stakes feel real, when the outcome matters. You don't feel fear about things that are irrelevant. You don't lose sleep over actions that have no consequence. The intensity of fear is proportional to the importance of the opportunity. The bigger the potential growth, the louder the internal resistance. Your brain is designed for survival, not for scale. It wants predictability. It prefers known discomfort over unknown possibility. So when you consider starting the business, making the leap, speaking up, building something ambitious, or redefining yourself, your system reacts. Not because the move is wrong, but because it's unfamiliar, and unfamiliarity triggers caution. But caution is not the same as danger. There's a critical difference between fear that protects you and fear that limits you. Protective fear prevents reckless harm. Limiting fear prevents meaningful progress. The problem is that both feel similar in your body. The same adrenaline, the same tightness, the same urge to step back. The question isn't whether you feel fear. The question is what the fear is attached to. If it's attached to growth, exposure, responsibility, or stepping into a bigger arena, then it's not a stop sign. It's a compass. It's highlighting the exact direction that will stretch you. Think about the moments that shaped you, the conversations you almost avoided, the risks you almost didn't take, the challenges you thought you weren't ready for. Before those moments, there was fear. After them, there was expansion. Fear is often the gateway to identity upgrades. When you feel resistance before doing something ambitious, that's a sign your current self is about to be outgrown. Your existing identity is trying to protect its boundaries. It's comfortable being the version of you that operates within known limits, but growth demands boundary violation. It demands stepping beyond what feels natural. Most people misinterpret that discomfort as evidence they're not capable. In reality, it's evidence they're stretching. If you only pursue what feels comfortable, your world shrinks. If you pursue what challenges you, your world expands. Fear is the friction between who you are and who you could become. There's a reason you don't feel fear when you scroll, delay, or settle. Those actions keep you within your current frame. But when you decide to aim higher, speak louder, build bigger, or commit deeper, your system lights up. That signal is not telling you to stop. It's telling you this matters. The people who build extraordinary outcomes aren't fearless. They just reinterpret the signal. They understand that fear is often the cost of entry into a larger life. Instead of asking, what if this goes wrong? They ask, what if this works and I never tried? Avoiding fear feels safe in the short term, but long term it creates a quieter, heavier emotion, regret. And regret is far more corrosive than fear. Fear is intense but temporary. Regret is subtle but persistent. When you feel fear, pause. Don't react automatically. Observe it. Ask what it's pointing toward. Ask what version of you exists on the other side of it. Most of the time, it's not catastrophe waiting for you. It's capacity waiting for you. You don't eliminate fear before acting. You move with it. You let it ride in the passenger seat while you stay in control of the direction. Because if something doesn't scare you at all, it probably isn't big enough to change you. Most people quit at discomfort. You're built to go past it. Discomfort is the dividing line between average and exceptional. Not talent, not intelligence, not resources. The ability to endure discomfort longer than others is what separates those who talk about potential from those who realize it. Most people have a low tolerance for friction. The moment something becomes inconvenient, uncertain, repetitive, or mentally exhausting, they interpret that feeling as a cue to stop. They tell themselves it's not aligned, not meant to be, not the right time. But what they're actually reacting to is resistance. Resistance is part of the process. When you start something meaningful, it feels exciting in the beginning. There's novelty, there's energy, but novelty fades quickly. What remains is work, repetition, problem solving, mistakes, delays. That's where most people exit. Not because they can't continue, but because the emotional rewa drops before the real results arrive. You're different. You feel discomfort too. You doubt, you get tired, you question yourself. But there's something in you that doesn't fully shut down when things get hard. There's a voice that says, keep going a little longer. Try one more time. Adjust instead of abandon. That voice matters. Discomfort is not evidence that you're failing. It's evidence that you're adapting. Muscles grow through tension, skills grow through repetition, confidence grows through exposure. None of those processes feel comfortable in real time. The world is structured in a way that rewards those who can delay emotional gratification. The ability to tolerate boredom while building mastery. The ability to endure temporary invisibility while creating long-term impact. Most people optimize for immediate relief. They choose short-term comfort over long-term expansion. They avoid the workout. They postpone the hard conversation. They stop publishing after the first wave of indifference. They retreat when progress feels slow. But slow progress is still progress. What feels like stagnation is often invisible growth. Beneath the surface, skills are wiring, patterns are improving, judgment is sharpening. The problem is that visible results lag behind internal development. If you quit during that lag, you never get to see the compounding effect. You are built to withstand that lag. You've already proven it in other areas of your life. Think about the times you stuck with something longer than you wanted to. Learning a complex skill, navigating a difficult season, working through frustration instead of escaping it. You didn't collapse, you recalibrated. That's resilience. Resilience isn't loud, it's not dramatic, it's quiet endurance. It's showing up again after a disappointing outcome. It's continuing to refine after mediocre feedback. It's staying consistent. When motivation fades, motivation is sustainable, and discipline is simply the decision to act, regardless of how you feel. The uncomfortable truth is that anything meaningful will demand more from you than you initially expect. More patience, more focus, more humility, more stamina. The people who win are not the ones who avoid this demand. They're the ones who accept it. When discomfort appears, instead of asking how to escape it, ask how to use it. Ask what it's teaching you. Ask which weakness it's exposing so you can strengthen it. Discomfort is feedback. It tells you where you're growing. It tells you where you're stretching beyond your previous limits. If you never feel it, you're probably operating below your capacity. There will be moments when you want to stop. Moments when quitting feels rational. Moments when the easier path looks tempting. That's normal. But remember this: temporary discomfort builds permanent capability, and you are far more capable than you've allowed yourself to demonstrate. The future is shaped by those who take responsibility for it. Most people treat the future like weather, something that happens to them, something unpredictable, external, outside their control. They wait to see what the economy does, what the market does, what other people decide. They adjust their expectations based on conditions instead of shaping the conditions themselves. But the future isn't discovered. It's engineered. Every breakthrough you see around you exists because someone decided not to accept the default trajectory. They looked at the way things were and refused to assume that was the way things had to remain. Responsibility begins at that moment. The moment you stop asking what will happen and start asking what you're going to build. Responsibility is heavy. It means you can't blame circumstances forever. You can acknowledge them. You can factor them in, but you can't hide behind them. When you take responsibility, you shift from passive observer to active participant. You stop waiting for permission. You stop waiting for perfect conditions. You begin designing. That doesn't mean you control everything. You don't. There will always be uncertainty. But responsibility means you control your response, your preparation, your standards, and your direction. It means you decide what kind of future you're willing to work toward, instead of settling for what's convenient. The uncomfortable truth is that responsibility removes excuses. If your results aren't where you want them to be, responsibility forces you to examine your inputs, your habits, your focus, your decisions. That level of ownership can feel intense because it eliminates the comfort of blame, but it also unlocks power. When you accept that your actions influence your trajectory, you regain leverage. You realize that small decisions compound. 1 hour of focus work per day becomes hundreds of hours per year. One skill practiced consistently becomes expertise. One courageous decision changes your environment. The future isn't shaped in dramatic cinematic moments. It's shaped in quiet daily choices. Most people underestimate this because the daily choices feel insignificant. Waking up early, practicing when no one is watching, saying no to distractions, learning instead of scrolling, building instead of complaining. These actions don't create immediate applause, they create momentum. And momentum is the real force that drives transformation. If you look at your life as a trajectory instead of a snapshot, everything changes. A snapshot can look unimpressive. A trajectory shows direction. Responsibility means focusing on direction even when the current snapshot doesn't look extraordinary. It also means thinking beyond yourself. When you take responsibility for the future, you're not just improving your own position, you're contributing to something larger. You're raising standards, you're solving problems, you're creating opportunities for others. Every meaningful advancement in society started with someone deciding to own the outcome instead of criticize it from the sidelines. It's easy to critique the world, it's harder to build within it. Builders take responsibility. They don't wait for perfect systems. They improve imperfect ones. They don't wait for ideal timing. They create leverage with what's available. They don't assume someone else will fix the problem. They step forward. There's a version of your future that is accidental, and there's a version that is intentional. The accidental version is shaped by default habits and external pressures. The intentional version is shaped by deliberate decisions and consistent execution. The difference between the two is responsibility. When you adopt that mindset, you stop drifting, you start reacting, you start experimenting, you start iterating. You treat your life like a project worth engineering. And once you begin taking responsibility at that level, you can't unsee the impact of your choices anymore. Your potential is not theoretical. It's waiting for execution. Most people treat their potential like a concept, something abstract, something flattering. They say things like, "You have so much potential," as if it's a compliment by itself. But potential without execution is just stored energy. It's unrealized capacity. It's possibility without proof. And possibility alone doesn't change anything. Potential only becomes real when it's applied, when it's tested, when it's translated into consistent action. Until then, it's just imagination. The world does not reward what you could do. It responds to what you actually build. You already have the raw materials, skills you haven't fully sharpened, ideas you haven't fully activated, courage you've only used in small increments. None of that is hypothetical. It's present, but its dormant potential feels frustrating because you can sense it. You feel that gap between what you're currently producing and what you know you're capable of producing. That internal tension is evidence. It's proof that there's more available. If you truly had no greater capacity, you wouldn't feel that dissatisfaction. Execution is the bridge. Execution is messy. It exposes you. It forces you to confront your weaknesses. It replaces fantasy with feedback. When you keep your potential theoretical, you protect your ego. As long as you never fully try, you can always say you could have done more. But that's a dangerous comfort, because over time, unused potential decays into regret. Execution requires specificity, not vague ambition, not general desire, specific targets, specific timelines, specific actions. When you convert potential into a plan, it becomes measurable. And when it's measurable, it becomes manageable. You don't need to execute perfectly. You need to execute consistently. The myth is that successful people unlock their full potential in one dramatic breakthrough. The reality is far less glamorous. They execute daily. They refine. They iterate. They adjust. They treat their potential like a system to be optimized, not a trait to be admired. Execution reveals your true level. And that can be uncomfortable when you act. You discover where you're strong and where you're average. You discover which skills need reinforcement. You encounter limitations, but those limitations are not verdicts. They're data points. They show you where to improve. Potential become S-power only through repetition. One workout doesn't transform a body. One draft doesn't perfect a skill. One attempt doesn't build mastery. But repeated execution compounds. It builds momentum. It creates feedback loops. It turns abstract ability into tangible results. There is a version of you operating at a higher standard. That version wakes up with intention, trains with focus, works with urgency, learns aggressively. That version is not waiting for inspiration. It's driven by commitment. Right now, the only difference between your current level and that higher version is daily execution. Not luck, not talent, not external validation. Daily execution, you don't need to discover new potential. You need to deploy the potential you already have. Every day you delay is a day your capability stays theoretical. Every day you act is a day it becomes real. The gap between who you are and who you could be is not mysterious. It's operational. And the moment you stop admiring your potential and start demanding performance from yourself is the moment everything begins to shift. So here's what I know about you. You're not here by accident. You didn't click on this because you're satisfied. You're here because something in you knows there's another level, a sharper version, a more disciplined version in the best possible way. You feel it when you're alone with your thoughts. You feel it when you see someone executing at a high level, and instead of jealousy, you feel recognition. Not, I wish I were them, but I could do that too. That feeling is not delusion, it's awareness. You've been playing smaller than your capacity, not because you're incapable, but because expansion requires intensity. It requires walking directly into discomfort instead of negotiating with it. Most people won't do that. They will rationalize. They will postpone. They will wait for perfect timing. And they will call it patience. But you're not built to watch your own life from the sidelines. You're built to engage with it. The moment you stop asking for motivation and start demanding execution from yourself, everything shifts. The moment you stop treating fear as an enemy and start seeing it as a marker of growth, everything accelerates. The moment you accept full responsibility for your trajectory, your leverage increases. And once you experience what you're capable of at full effort, you'll never be satisfied operating at half capacity again. That's the real shift. Not hype, not emotion. Standards. Raise your standards for yourself. Raise your tolerance for discomfort. Raise your expectations for what you produce. Because whether you realize it or not, you are already capable of more. And now you can't pretend you don't know it anymore.